This is the burning issue on the happy world of 5FM radio, bringing you hot, smoldering topics on a weekly basis. Your participation is important.
A very wonderful morning it is in Lusaka city areas. Yes, the weather looks pretty good today, and we are grateful to the Lord Almighty for this wonderful day. And welcome to the burning. This is the Thursday edition of the burning issue, and we are grateful that you found time to tune in to 89.9 here in Lusaka and the surrounding areas. Remember, we are also live on our partner radio stations. We are live on Katete FM in Katete, covering literally the entire Eastern Province on 103.3 FM. And of course, in Kabwe, Central Province is well covered. We are live on Spice FM in Kabwe and ZFM in Kapiri, equally covering most part of the Central Province. We are also live on the Copper Belt, our partner radio stations, Platinum Radio in Ndola on 99.0 FM. And remember, ZFM in Kapiri is on 100.3 FM. Take note of that. It's 100.3 FM. So Platinum is on 99.7 in Ndola, covering the rest of Copper Belt. So is iWave FM on 90.1 FM, equally, spreading its wings all the way to the northern and western part of the Copper Belt as well. And in Mansa, we are on Tuta FM on 90.7, covering Rapula Province, not forgetting Isunga Radio in Northern Province, Senga Hill to be precise, on 88.3. We are grateful to you, Isunga FM. And also, Chinsali is well covered, meaning Muchinga Province is equally well covered. We are live on Muchinga Radio in Chinsali on 88.1. Don't forget to follow our conversation on our Facebook page. We are live on Zambia. Later on in the course of the program, I'll give you, our listener, an opportunity to call in and interact with our guest. And I'm your host, Zakaria Banda. Now, today, we are very privileged to host State Council Winter Kavimba. He is president of the Economic Front Party. It's a pleasure to have you on this program, but also allow me, on behalf of 5FM Radio and our partner radio stations, to convey our sincere condolences on your passing of your beloved father, and may God continue so. It must have been a very difficult time for you and family, but we sure hope that God has done his part, has comforted you well.
Thank you, Zaki, and thank you, dear listeners across the country. And thank you for... You're right that it wasn't an easy time. I knew that my father would die one day, but I didn't want him to die.
Right.
Yeah, so when it happened, it was a difficult situation for the family.
Right.
Yeah, but thank God that we got over it, and we are back again in circulation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you for telling his story. I watched one of your podcasts when you told us a story of your beloved dad. Quite an interesting story.
It was an interesting story.
Yeah. Good to know that you didn't agree on a lot of things, especially politically, no?
but we remained very good friends.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in fact, what brought us together, was more of the differences we had than the agreements between us.
Yeah.
That's what cemented our bond.
Absolutely.
So each time my father wanted to approach me with an opinion, he had to be very careful whether or not I would agree with him, and vice versa.
Wow, quite a unique way of a relationship.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's good to have you back into politics. Obviously, you've been in it. You must have just taken a break for that cause. But the country is debating. The country is talking burning issues around the amendment of the Constitution. But before we get into it, I would love to know how you are doing, considering we are drawing closer and closer to the elections next year, and how Economic Front is positioning itself?
That's a good beginning. That's a good beginning. We are just months away now from the next election.
Right.
And going by the events that are unfolding now, it will be it's an event that we all have to watch out for.
Right.
So as a political party with our own manifesto, we're also positioning ourselves to see the role that we can play in the 2026 elections. We're not an NGO, we are a political party.
Right.
We've got membership, across the country, and we are hoping to have the last central committee of the year. If we don't have it this month, then we'll certainly have a special one next month. We normally have a central committee in December just to close the year, to review the activities of the party in the year, and also to figure out an action plan for the following year.
Right.
So we are still discussing this, whether the central committee would be this month. If not, then we shall have a special one, certainly by next month. And one of the issues at the center of that meeting will be how we position ourselves vis-a-vis the 2026 elections.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, let's get to the burning issue,
which is
amendment of the Constitution. There's a lot of talk. Around the process.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of probably pretty much less talk on the content. But let's dwell more on the process. Has the process, because the debate is that the process is illegal, because I mean the whole amendment of the Constitution is illegal because the process has not been followed according to the Constitution. Others are debating that there was no need to follow the actual process as stipulated in the Constitution. But as a learned counsel, you should know these things better. What is it that has not been done right, and what is it that is right around the amendment of the Constitution?
Yeah. Okay. I dealt with the constitutional making processes in one of my podcasts, giving it a historical context and drawing lessons from countries like the United States, India, minus Britain, which doesn't have a written constitution. And the conversation that I was developing in that podcast really is that there is not one single formula of coming up with a constitution that you would consider to stand the test of time, so to say.
Right.
Okay. And I took time to dig into history, and I thought that podcast would contribute to the ongoing debate now.
Right.
The debate now is around the process.
Right.
So really we have to deal with the definition of what is that process.
Yes.
What process are we talking about? That's the first question. The second question is, who defines that process? Okay. Now, first question on the process means really the methodology.
Right.
The approach that the whole constitutional amendment program should take. And at the center of that is the fact that the people must participate. Get to the question, which may be academic but real. What do we mean by people? Who defines, that now you have enough people or now you don't have enough people? So I think stakeholders, different groups of stakeholders have taken different positions, on this.
Right.
I haven't read the Concord judgment on this when the bill was stopped.
Right.
I've tried to interpret the judgment, and one of the reasons is because of the family issues that you have been involved in. So I haven't had time to. But I think what the Concord said, and I think this is important, he didn't strike down the bill. Okay?
Right.
Concord didn't say Bill 7 is illegal. I think what Concord said was, can Bill 7 be anchored on the people? That's what is called the process.
Right.
Can the people be brought on board so that the end product of Bill 7 is the people's product and not that of the executive? Okay? So I think that's an important point to make.
Right.
And because of that, when the government decided to set up the technical committee, we went ourselves as the economic front to go and submit before the technical committee. And our submissions are there on the party's Facebook page and on my personal page. Mm-hmm. So we did submit as part of the process that the technical committee was sitting. It divided itself into smaller groups and spread itself across the country to hear submissions from citizens. It appears that there are stakeholders, there are still groups of stakeholders that are not satisfied with that process. It is not satisfied with the technical committee's program to try to capture as many people in its sittings as possible. Now, that point can be either subjective or it can be objective. But before I get to that, let me get back into a bit of history of our constitution making processes in Zambia.
Right.
Starting from the Chona Commission of 1972-1973. And then we come to the Mvunga Commission of 1990, which did not sit or actually commence its sittings to conclude its program, because then we got into that window of change. Okay?
Right.
Which was triggered by the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989. The first amendment to the Constitution was on the 4th of December, when President Kaunda, at a press conference at the State House, following the bill that was introduced to Parliament, which was predominantly UNIP then, decided to sign a bill into law which removed Article 4 of the Constitution at the time. Now, Article 4 of the Constitution at that time provided that there shall be only one political party in Zambia. Although it didn't name UNIP as that political party, everybody, after Kapwepwe's UPP was banned, ANC signed the Choma Declaration with UNIP, the only political party in existence at the time was UNIP. So on the 4th of December, KK signs the bill, amendment bill of the Constitution to remove Article 4. So multipartyism was then born again in Zambia.
Right.
Okay? The MMD had campaigned during that time that the first thing that they would do in office would be to repeal the 1973 Constitution, which was in place then, the Constitution which birthed the one-party state. MMD did not do that. Instead, in 1995, President Chiluba appointed the Mwanakatwe Constitutional Review Commission, headed by, the educationist and former Minister of Finance, John Mwanakatwe, who was then in retirement. And everybody thought that the constitution would be completely done away with, and then we'll have a new constitution. It was not to be. What instead happened was that there was the Constitutional Amendment Act of 1996. So the constitution was simply amended. The Mwanakatwe Constitutional Review Commission did not put to rest the issue of what type of constitution Zambians should have because of that amendment and forward to a complete repeal of the constitution. So when President Mwanawasa took over in 2001 from FTJ,
right,
he then went to the Mungomba Constitutional Review Commission, of which I was a member for a couple of months before I resigned.
The commission.
From the commission, yes. So, again, the demand from the people was that the constitution must be repealed. Okay? That is in 2006. Now, that's where the issue of the process and the people comes in. There were certain groups of stakeholders that argued at the time that they would not participate in the National Constitution Conference, which was looking at the Mungomba Constitutional Review Commission report and recommendations. So what Levy did then as president was to actually enact the National Constitution Commission Act, which governed the process. So the act provided for the list of who the delegates to the NCC should be. And I think that the total number, if I remember, was slightly over 600 of the NCC. Okay? I was in the PF then. Michael Sata, with the PF, boycotted
the NCC.
The NCC.
Yeah.
Okay? I was one of the advocates that PF should attend the NCC and not boycott. But Michael Sata was of a different view. The issue became contentious within the party, if you remember.
Yeah.
And some of the PF members of parliament decided to defy the decision of the party. Not Michael Sata's decision, but we had a central committee meeting which decided by secret ballot that PF will not attend the NCC. 16 members of parliament then, led by Dr. Peter Machungwa,
yes,
decided to defy that position of the party. And what followed was the expulsion from the party.
And they got the name the rebels.
Yes, we actually called them the rebels. So, the Catholic Church boycotted that process on the basis that the process had an inbuilt majority for the executive. There were a number of that were appointed, PSEs, and others. And in the view of the Catholic Church was that, this is a flawed process. This is a process which already has a determined outcome at the end of the day. So it's not democratic. So they boycotted that NCC. Okay? So what is happening now is not new. Okay? They also boycotted the Michael Sata Technical Committee in 2013. Okay? Again, on the basis of the people. So, when I listened to President Hakainde Hichilema that no, the people, that what is happening now is because, people hate him. No. He has to go back into this history that there are certain groups of stakeholders in this country who think that it is either their way or the highway, and nobody else. Who think that they represent the majority of the Zambian people than otherwise. Who believe, in my view, that what they say must be what should be followed all the time. And they speak in the name of the people. Here is my argument. That if we all accept that this is a democracy, democracy is represented by the people's elected representatives. Democracy is not represented by represented by the number of NGOs that you have. Democracy is not represented by the number of churches that you have or church organizations. Democracy is represented by the number of elected people. Those that went to the Zambian people and said, elect me or elect us. They are the cornerstone or the kernel of democracy. Everybody else outside that umbrella is just a supportive, auxiliary organ. So it's interesting, in my view, in my humble view, that NGOs in this country, church organizations in this country, think that they can substitute themselves for the elected representatives of the people. Okay? Secondly, if you live in a democracy, there are institutions, there are channels, there are avenues of expressing our views. And one of the channels is a radio station such as this one. So I come here and canvass my views to the Zambian people in the hope that I can persuade them to hear me out and come over to my side. There are institutions in a democracy. There are rules, there are regulations. Okay? Now, let me get back slightly to this point about the people. In my podcast, when I was discussing constitutional making processes in different countries, I referred to the U.S. Philadelphia Convention of 1787. Of 1787. The U.S. got its independence in 1776 after the war of independence against the British, which lasted from 1775 to 1776. They then got on with their constitutional making process, which went on up to 1787, the process which brought the 13 colonies, Confederate colonies at the time. Because history is important, Zaki, so that we don't mislead each other. Okay? History is important. It's not as if Zambia is the first country today to be making a constitution, reviewing its constitution, or enacting or repealing the constitution. Now, in the Philadelphia Convention, which was representative of the 13 colonies, the total population of the 13 colonies at the time was 1.6 million people. That was the total population of the 13 colonies. When they decided to send delegates to Philadelphia, 2 of the colonies were so poor that they couldn't raise transport money for their delegates. So they were left out of that process. Only 11 colonies were represented. Now, the total number of delegates at that convention was 55. That's what the 13 colonies considered as a representative number of the 1.6 million. And there were only 4 lawyers. There were 3 farmers. So they tried to get all the interest groups together. Okay? So if you look at the number of 55 delegates, and you look at the over 600 delegates at the NCC, would you really say that that 55 was a big number? The answer is no. And yet, that 55 group, that number was able to formulate a constitution, produce a document which went round to the 13 colonies. It was ratified by the 13 colonies, and the US has a constitution today that we all admire, whether through ignorance or through a bit of knowledge. Everybody says, oh no, the United States, oh no, the United States. And since its enactment in 1787, the US Constitution has only undergone 26 amendments to date. Okay? So this issue of who defines the people is important. And my argument is that only those that are elected by the Zambian people, HH and his group, PF members of parliament, and everybody, those are the ones that represent the Zambian people. So I don't agree with those that think that outside this group they represent the Zambian people more than this group. If you want to test democracy, go to the people. Okay? And this is where this confusion is coming from. I'm a member of the church myself. I'm UCZ. Okay? But my reverend at the church has no right to impose an opinion on me in the name of God. No. Okay? And I don't think that every member of the congregation in my church belongs to one political party. We belong to the same congregation, but we belong to different clubs, social gatherings, and everything. Okay? I don't think that there is any human being, whether they want to speak in the name of God or otherwise, who has a right to impose an opinion, their opinion, on another human being. I think people must be left free to think without coercion, without intimidation. They must be allowed to judge their leaders, whether they are genuine or not, both in politics and in church.
Now, other stakeholders have raised issues whilst we are deep into the process itself.
Yes.
Issues raised is that as opposed to the administration coming up with the proposed amendments,
yes,
this should have been done by the technical committee, meaning that the technical committee should have been set up first and then draw what the proposed amendments and gazette it, and later on go around to the people and then come up with amendments. The argument here is that the administration, which has been narrowed to cabinet, should not have been, and it's illegal that they should have been the people to come up with proposed amendments. Who draws the proposed?
Here is how it is. Here is how it has been done in the past. Okay?
Yeah.
The president, when he appoints a constitutional review commission, like the Mwanakatwe Constitutional Review Commission,
yes,
like the Mungomba Constitutional Review Commission, he appoints the number of people to compose that commission, and then there are terms of reference. Now, the terms of reference come from the executive. So the president said, because the Constitutional Review Commission is often in form of a commission of inquiry.
Yes.
Go around the country, find out from people what they think about the following.
Right.
So the terms of reference are clearly spelled out in the Gazette notice and in the appointment letters to
the committee.
The commission.
Yeah.
Okay? And then there is a last term of reference, which often says any other thing, anything else, related to or incidental to the above terms of reference. In other words, go and hear as many views as you possibly can gather. Okay? So when I went before the technical committee, I told the technical committee, let me start with the views that I have myself as a citizen before I come to the amendments. And I outlined, land, language, etc., etc. Then I got back, to the... So there is nothing that makes you not say anything outside those amendments, in my view. Nothing. There's nothing that says, apart from these amendments, you can't say something else that makes sense.
Okay.
And I don't think that the spirit of this project is to gag everybody within that security war of the 13 proposed amendments. When I got to the amendments myself, I said the technical committee, there are certain amendments, proposed amendments, that I don't agree with.
Which were?
I'll give you some of them. One of them, I disagree that the president should be given powers to nominate 40 or 45 members of parliament. I disagree. It's an extremely obnoxious article to put in the constitution, because you are not dealing with angels. No president is an angel. And I said to the technical committee, we are not enacting this for HH. Okay? We are enacting this for the current president and future presidents if this amendment is to go through. And therefore, we must be cautious that it is possible at one point in future to have a rogue president. Democracy gives you not anybody, but even anything. Okay? It is possible for that president to go to his village to go and pick up 40 relatives. And he says, the constitution says I can nominate 40 people. These are 40 people. But they come from your village, yes, but the constitution doesn't say that I can't pick them from the village. But you drink, we know that you drink with some of them, yes. Because the constitution doesn't say that, don't pick people that you drink with. And they will be right within that constitution, within the article of the constitution. So why do you want to tempt human beings when we know the flaws of the human being? When we know that a human being of flesh and blood can be a human being that can do good and do bad. Why do you want to tempt? So I disagreed. That was my submission.
Right.
That I disagree with this. I also disagreed with the I submitted that I disagree with the proposed proportional representation of women, youth, and
different labeled, yeah,
people living with disabilities. Okay, I said this country is not poor because it doesn't have enough youths in parliament. Nobody can prove from the executive that is proposing this that this country is poor, rather, but not that this country is poor because it doesn't have enough women represented in parliament. That's not true. You can't prove that. Whichever method that you want to apply. Okay? So the system of first past the post perfectly well. I also submitted that these examples that we like giving, but in South Africa is done like this, is done like this, because that's what social media does. It puts you into this where we spend time by bundles sharing ignorance and sharing examples that you don't even understand. The debate now in South Africa is that they want to move away from the proportional representation system because they think it's not democratic enough. Why should you vote for a political party and not human beings? Now, I said, who is going to determine the people, these blocks of representatives? On what basis are these people going to be picked up? Now, I read on social media some people saying, no, this is being done because political parties are failing, to adopt enough women. That's the rationale which is being, given. But that is a political party issue. That's a political party issue. Okay? And you leave that to political parties. What you do is encourage political parties to get in as many women as possible. That's what you do. You don't do it by creating blocks, for them, because you have no basis of picking on those 20 women, for example. You have no basis of picking on those 20 youths, for example. You have no yardstick for picking on 20 people living with disabilities. You are just creating an unnecessary contentious matters in the country and in the constitution. So I disagreed with that part. I agreed with the amendment to Article 52 of the constitution now. The one which provides for, during nominations, if somebody withdraws, then
fresh
nominations should come into place. I agreed with that. I said, this is an obnoxious article. I don't even know why the framers of that constitution, that amendment, put it in there. But typically, it must have been a copy and paste issue, in my view. So that article is bad. Then I got a question from one of the commissioners. But don't you see this? That it will disadvantage the political party, from which that member came from.
Yes.
Again, my answer was simple. This is a political party issue. You don't use the constitution to regulate the administration of political parties. So if you are going to have people in your political party that are not loyal and faithful to the party, that they are prepared to betray the country at that last moment, it's not the fault of the constitution, it is the fault of the political party. Okay?
Yeah.
So I played my part. As part of the process, I submitted. Whether or not my views are taken on board is neither here nor there. That's what democracy is all about. But there will be a record. So if I made sense today, but what I said is rejected, maybe 100 years down the road, somebody will find that document and say, Winter was right. The economic front was right in 2025. So I'm not worried about. I'm not self-righteous. That only what I think is true. I think what other people think may even be truer than what I think is true. So we must approach one another, Zach. I want to make this argument with the due respect. The idea that all of us that are in politics are fools and only those that are in civil society organizations are intelligent is wrong. It's wrong. That the good can only come from the churches, church organizations, civil society organizations. The rest of us that are on this side of the aisle are just dumb. It's not right. It's not right. In a democracy, we must strive to persuade one another. Let me hear what you say, and you should hear what I say. If you don't agree with me, you don't go and organize a demonstration to show that you disagree with me. You continue persuading me. You don't use intimidation. If you don't do this, I shall come with my family and demonstrate at your house. No. We continue debating. That's why the Indian constitution, they started debating in 19 1942, and they only concluded in 1946. Why? Because they were using all this period to persuade one another. Do we want India to be a religious society, country, a new India? They said no. What type of society should it be? It must be a secular, society. So even as you have Hinduism today as the predominant religion in India, India is still a secular state, in terms of religion by constitution. So the Muslims have the right to worship and conscience, the non-Hindus have the right, So we must approach democracy. Either we accept democracy as it is, or we are not democratic. We can't be condemning Kaunda, that Kaunda was pushing his views down our throats. And today, we have groups of people that want to do the same. So what was bad for Kaunda, it is bad for anybody else today. That is my argument.
Now, I'm grateful that you've shared what your submissions were.
Yes.
I would like your thoughts on two other issues that are being proposed.
Yeah.
And of course, these have brought about debates as well, delimitation of the constituencies, and this, the debate around this is that it's going to be costly to bring on board a huge number of about 54 new constituencies, and that brings into Parliament new MPs with costs attached, but also added to that was capacity of the building to house a huge number like that. The second one is the qualification of the Secretary to Cabinet, which is being proposed that it must be reduced from 10 years of experience to 5. Now, this has spiked debate, reason being that we, first of all, in the past few years, we have seen the position of permanent secretary itself, coming from it being held by technocrats to being held by cadres. And this has become a source of concern. And now we are seeing it escalating to the position of Secretary to Cabinet, because then it will be possible. It's possible, if it goes through, for this government next year to appoint a cadre who has served the past 5 years in government to the position of Secretary to Cabinet.
Yeah.
And the fact that I've mentioned that we've seen permanent secretary positions coming from technocrats to cadres, it's concerning.
Yeah.
Don't you think this is going to be worse with this being if it goes through that Secretary to Cabinet should be 5 years civil service in terms of experience?
Yeah. Zaki, you raise important questions, and here is my contribution to that. The problem that we have in Africa, and in my country Zambia in particular, is that we always want to amend the law to suit individuals. So if I look at you and you are tall and I don't like you, then I must push for a piece of legislation that to be MP, you must not be as tall as Zakaria Banda. So I exclude you. Because me, I'm short, you are tall, so I get rid of you from the process. Okay? Then somebody else will come again and say, oh no, to be president, you must not be as short as Winter Kavimba. So they enact, That's what is going on now. And it's been going on not only under UPND, it started even with the
previous government.
FTJ.
Yes.
FTJ amended the law to grant bail to people involved in motor vehicle theft,
yes,
just to fix one individual. Okay?
Yeah.
That just to fix one individual. a man, or he thought was being mischievous. Okay? That is the problem. When we were joining local government ourselves, I was discussing this with one of my colleagues in local government. Zaki, the last thing that we ever thought was to rise to the position of PS. Last thing. Even to the position of town clerk. Because to get to that position, you must have a wealth of experience and knowledge about the civil service. Okay? So it took years to get there during that time. In my last podcast, if you watched it, I dealt with this issue of nepotism and cronism. This idea of political party leaders, not only HH, even though that came before HH, to use civil service positions as payback to those that supported them and those that gave them financial support. Okay? To be oblivious of the competency of the civil service, as long as I've appointed you and you are my friend. And I went back again into history, that in 1960, when J.F. Kennedy won that election in November of 1960, he appointed his brother, Robert F. Kennedy, as Attorney General. And the Americans were very unhappy with that decision. That they should have a situation where the president is a member of this family, and even the Attorney General is a member of the same family. But they had a problem, because at that time, they didn't have any law. They didn't have any constitutional provision that prohibited that. Okay? The Pendleton Act, which they had of 1883, just provided against cronism. So it said that if I'm in charge of the Ministry of Justice, I can't appoint you as my friend or my supporter to any position in the Ministry of Justice. But he didn't say a brother should not appoint another brother. After the Kennedy experience, the Americans in 1967 moved on to enact a constitution, to enact a law, which is now known as the Federal Anti-Nepotism Statute, which strictly prevents, that kind of appointment. And it defines the word relative in very broad terms. So they learned a lesson. Here were the Americans saying, well, Kennedy is a human being, so we didn't know that a human being in that position would do this kind of thing, would go and appoint, a relative. Okay? I dealt with the situation in Uganda today under Yoweri Museveni, where Museveni is president, his wife Janet is Minister of Education, his son Muhoozi is the army chief, commander of the Uganda People's Army. I dealt with the question, a similar situation in Nicaragua, where Daniel Ortega and his wife are co-presidents. So the presidency is in the bedroom. But they did that under an amendment. The Sandinista government went to parliament and they created a position of a co-president. And when that amendment was passed, Daniel Ortega appoints the wife, Rosario, as the co-president. Okay? So the issue here is one, to accept that all human beings have fallen. That's what the Bible says in Romans. Okay? We are all iniquitous. That's the nature of human beings. We are prone, to sin. And therefore, to start making to suit a situation, UPND may make this today because they think that the current situation is disadvantaging them. What if they don't win? What if they don't win the election next year? So we should be looking at a larger country, larger perspectives of a nation. I think that's a duty that leaders have. We should not look at, narrow interests. That's bad leadership. We must enact the law for this generation and the future generations. Okay? There are only 2 political parties in the United States. And yet, none of them, every time the Democrats, come to power, they want to amend the Constitution. When the Republicans come to power, they want to. That's why from 1787, it has only been amended 26 times. And you can take the average, of that. So, be bad leaders. We should be good leaders. Because we have a duty to hand over this country to future generations. And they must find it in good order because of the laws that we enact, the regulations that we enact, so that they can improve, on those. So the point I'm making is that nepotism has gained roots in political parties. And it is possible to have a secretary to the cabinet in future, because 5 years, we may find that the next political party doesn't have anybody who has a qualification
5 years, yes.
So they would want to reduce that, and they look around and say, the cadre we wanted, 2 years, Chabe. So let's amend the constitution and put 2 years. You can't run a country like that. You can't run a country like that. And one of the problems that we have suffered from now is this issue of cadreism, cronyism, nepotism in the civil service. That's what is affecting the competency and efficiency of the civil service. Shouldn't we worry about that? Certainly we should get worried about that. Okay? Because this is not the present civil service. This is not a political party's civil service. This is a civil service for the Zambian people, which is supposed to deliver using the policies of the political party in power and the government that is ruling. So I have a problem with that. Just because Upnd has not been able to replace Patrick Kangwa does not mean that you should change the law. Okay? Does not mean that you should change the law. The other issue you raised was
the
delimitation. Again, let's go back to the rationale. The rationale should not be, the argument should not be, it is a cost to do this, it is a cost to do this, it is a cost to do this. No. The rationale is, what do you want to achieve? I think that should be the correct question. You want to subdivide constituencies to achieve what? Okay? On the one hand, you are saying that you want to increase, you want to have this proportional representation in parliament because you want to increase the number of women and youth and people living with their disabilities. On the other hand, you are saying that you want to increase the number of constituencies so that parliament is more representative because some constituencies are too large geographically, and some of them are densely populated. So I think the rationale is important. The government must explain to us why it is doing what it is doing and create debate around that. Okay? The problem I have myself is I want someone to explain to me, because I hear these simplistic arguments and they come to you, in a very disappointing manner. Oh no, constituency development fund, now what it means, you are going to divide, now 40 million will go to this part of the constituency and another 40
equal
million.
Distribution of...
Yeah, which is even nonsense. It's not even equal distribution. Because if you are going to subdivide 2 constituencies, as an example, one constituency has 100,000 people, and you want to subdivide it on the basis of population density. So you want to do what? Divide it into 50,000 people. Okay? Constituent development, CDF comes, you give 40 million to the 50,000 and another 40 million to another 50,000. Excuse me. You go to constituency B, which has 70,000 people. And you say, no, this one is too small, but it is also, but it's densely populated. So let's divide it into half, 35,000, 35,000. CDF comes, you give 40 million kwacha to the 35,000 people and 40 million kwacha to another 35,000. You've just given, constituency A and B, which has 50 people, 40 million kwacha. The one also which has 35,000 people, or 40 million kwacha. What equity is there? What equity is there? Okay? So even the idea of CDF or ZAC must be rolled out on the basis of the development levels of each district and each constituency. I argued myself during the Michael Sata era, when Michael Sata was the Minister of Local Government and How. I said, you can't give Lusaka a larger grant than Mazaboka, for example. Because then it means Mazaboka will continue lagging behind. If you want the rural constituencies to develop, to try to catch up with the Lusaka, for example, then Ngwe must get a larger grant than Lusaka. Okay? Then Kapiri must get a larger grant than Ndola. That's what makes sense. But to get a lump sum figure of 40 million and give it to everybody, that's why you find now you have situations where some people are saying, oh no, but the constitution had no capacity to use the 40 million kwacha. There's no capacity. Okay? So that's the thing about the yeah. It is a good exercise if the rationale is put out there for debate and agreement. It should not be seen, to be leaning in one. The argument now is that which constituencies do you want to subdivide? They are not known. The methodology is not known. So you create this anxiety, unnecessary apprehension in people's minds. And that's what we call lack of transparency. Transparency means clear the doubts in the minds of people that you are doing this in bad faith. Show them that you are not doing it in bad faith. You are doing it in good faith.
What would you propose should be the basis of delimitation? Should you take over governing of this country as economic front? Would you, what would you rather is the basis of delimitation? And also on CDF, is this something you would keep as a government?
I've been anti-CDF myself from the time when I was in government. I told Mr. Sata I don't agree with this. As a local government practitioner, my argument is that the amount of CDF must go to local authorities. They have the capacity, they have the technocrats, to do that. Okay? Upnd, PF have called this decentralization. That's not what it means in local government. So they have their own definition of decentralization. That's not what it means. I come from Shibuyunji district here, Mwembesh constituency. I haven't seen any evidence of CDF. Lives of the people in that constituency. None. They go and do a small bridge, like this. They go and grade, 3 kilometers of a road. No laterite, no nothing. No drainage. And they call that CDF at work. Let's get serious, with the country. Okay? And if CDF is working, Zaki, you don't need to advertise it. It will advertise itself. Into arguments. Bring people on TV, a 1x2 classroom block is considered the CDF success story. That can be done by villagers. You don't even need CDF. Okay? So I'm anti-CDF myself, only to the extent that this is money that cannot be vested in the hands of a small committee, which does not compose the representatives of the people. Again, the principles and the demands of democracy question that. I know that they have CDF in Kenya, and probably that's where the MMD borrowed it from. And I think because somebody went and attended the workshop there in Kenya, and somebody came from some country and ran a workshop, because that's what we do. We are lazy thinkers. So you sit at in a workshop, and somebody runs some bullet points on the screen, and then you come back here and say, hey, CDF, I found constituents development fund, and that becomes an issue. You don't study the social conditions, the economic conditions of your country. All these countries along the line of rail, Zaki, were not intended to be cities. Okay? I think this is important to mention. When the British were governing this country, intentions of creating a city, all these towns that you see from Livingstone, to Chirabombwe, were railway sidings. They were intended to get copper, transport copper from the north down into southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. Okay? The country which the British wanted to develop cities into is Zimbabwe. At the layout of Harare. First time I went to Harare in 1981, I think. I thought maybe I was in London before it was run down to the level it is today. Nicely layout of a city. So Lusaka was not intended to.
Was the transit?
Yes, it was a transitory point for transport. So we should start ourselves now as an independent people. Not to call Chirabombwe, a municipality. I was laughing. They go and upgrade the Chongwe as a municipality. Chongwe, which has only one road, the Great East Road, going through, How does it become a municipality when it is still a village? How? It doesn't have, a development plan to tell you where, the commercial center should be, where the schools should be. It doesn't. So all these are political decisions which are made without putting thought into. So when you announce that Chongwe is now is a municipality, everybody jumps. Then when you change and say Livingstone will now be a city, then everybody jumps and say, hey, we have made progress. This is what you hear speeches. This is what is called development. Change the name of Livingstone from a municipal council to a city council. So there is a speech there. Ministers, and they say this is development. Okay? So that's my position on CDF.
Great.
And delimitation.
This is the Thursday edition of the Burning Issue. Our guest is Mr. Winter Council. He is president of the Economic Front Party, and we've discussed quite a number of issues. If clarity has been made on the Constitution amendment process, we would like to hear from you. For those who would like to have an argument and disagree, please, you are welcome. And let's stick to as much as possible to what we've so far discussed, and let's have our arguments around our topic of discussion. We'll take your phone calls on 0955221515. That's the one. Remember, we are also live in Katete and Eastern Province on Katete FM in Kabwe, ZFM in Kapiri, in Ndola, and iWave FM in Chungola, not forgetting Tuta and Machinga Radio in Chinsadi. We have a call. You can have your headsets on, okay. And let's hear from this one. Good morning, and thank you for calling. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Please share your name and where you're calling us from.
Mr. Upnd, calling from Second Sound.
Mr. Banda, yes, be quick. You've got a minute.
Yeah, quick a bit, but my concern in my present interview is this. Where you're ready to speak, you need to catch. Where I'm concerned very much as a Zambian citizen is, where a lot of people will come from during the registration of voters. A lot of voters have been added into the already voters. You have seen the queues, how it has been. You have seen how people start voting from morning.
Yes, please.
You've seen how people start voting from 06 to 06. And again, this time, please, we want more go and advise Mr. President, always meet Mr. President, and to tell the Electoral Commission. Make more streams or more polling stations so that the people who are being added to the voters should be accommodated. Please, we want people to go and vote, but the fact is that time limit is very short.
Yeah.
A lot of people end voting very late, which is we cannot do our vote. People die because of the the vote. I don't know why they die. I think the person who died, we don't know.
Thank
so
you.
please,
Thank
we
you.
want people to vote nicely so that by 6 hours they finish voting. But we end 20 and 1 hour, people are voting. More election, more residency.
Thank you, Mr. Banda. Your time is up, unfortunately, but we've gotten your message.
More polling stations.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Banda, for the contribution. And we'll take some more on 0955221515. That's the number you're calling us on the Thursday edition of The Penny Issue. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Please share your name and where you're calling us from.
I'm talking to Mr. Chilonda Osaka.
Yes, Mr. Chilonda, you have a minute. Please make use of it.
Yeah, good morning, Winter.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, Winter.
Mr. Chilonda.
Mr. Chilonda. Yeah. You know, in the elephant in the room where we are saying, people, they are saying this constitution, Bill 7 is illegal. It has been represented. Yes, but now, the point what I want to say that some people are saying it was rejected by the Constitutional Court. But my understanding is that the court says, go back and consult to the people. And the president appointed technical, including Judge Mshabati. They went around. Is it not a consultation to the people? Why there is arguing? This constitution going through. Me, I'm still supporting it, but many people are rejecting. What's the problem? I thank Mother.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's take some more. 5221515. That's the number you're calling us on. Good morning.
Yes.
Not too bad, thank you. Your name and where you're calling us from?
Thank you very much. Cool voice on the line here.
Lukulu Voice.
Yes.
Please go ahead. You've got a minute.
Thank you very much. How are you, the State Council, Mr. Winter Kavimba?
Fine, thank you, Lukulu Voice.
Thank you very much. Let me try to differ a little bit with you.
Go ahead.
In terms of the delimitation, that we need to delimitate our constituencies, which are vast. If we look at it in this way that we can only delimitate when you see the size of people around that area and then how big it is, then it is wrong in that way. Because as you know, our country, the population is growing every day. Not every year, it's every day. So where you saw 50 people, it will be hundreds tomorrow. Where there were hundreds, there will be 200. So as a country, I feel we need to plan ahead so that we are not caught napping. That's the best thing to do. So delimitation is the best that you can do. It's not about CDF alone. No, it's about other programs that may come through government. It's not about CDF only. And it's the added advantage here. But the reason why, even that 40, we hear that's 40 million, which will start now working next year. Even if it's put in those constituencies like Rukuru, where I'm coming from, the whole Lusaka is Rukuru. That's how it is. Rukuru is the whole Lusaka. How many constituencies are in Lusaka? 7. So that is one. Surely, even if you put that 40 there, it will like drop in the ocean. Nothing that's tangible that will come out. So delimitation is very important. Then secondly, why didn't the PF put that clause in the Constitution that every 10 years we have to delimitate? Because it means when we delimitate that clause, it means we need to touch the Constitution so that it will now read. Here it's reading 156 constituencies. But now when we delimitate, it now reads differently according to the number of constituencies. So meaning we need to. So I don't see why there's a problem that the Constitution should not be amended because of the time. Tell me, Mr. Kavimba, that there's a time to do the. I thought it's every time from 1 to 5th year, which is the term of any sitting government. So that's my question.
I think, Lukulu, maybe remember that delimitation is tied to 10 years, like you put it.
Yes.
But it's also tied to census. So it all comes down to population, because during the census, you get to know how many people are in what constituency, what, and so on. So, you're speaking one and the same. It's all around census, and census is only done after 10 years. That's when you are able to tell whether the population has gone from 100 to 200.
Yes, and they need to bring the report, isn't it?
Of course. So it's always after the census.
Yeah, so what's the argument? So should we forget about it? It's okay, even if it's in the Constitution, or what? What are you trying to say?
Saying the PF should not have put it in the Constitution, that delimitation will be after. It's not about the PF, but it's about the fact that census is done and then delimitation can be considered, because we would have known how the population growth is at that point. Yes,
okay, fine. Now I understand what you say, but my point is, these were against Bill 10, because delimitation is there. That's what I'm saying, which is the best time, because it's already shrined in our Constitution that we need to do delimitation every 10 years. That's my argument.
Thank you.
I'm saying to delimitate the constituency, it's not about how many people are there for us to delimitate or not delimitate. We just need to delimitate if it's big, so that people are always there. They always follow developmental program. They follow. You find that the people had maybe there were 1,000 people. Next year there will be maybe 1,500. So we need to always think ahead. That's what I mean. So Bill 7 fits well over such kind of growth, which is limitation. And that was a problem.
Thank you.
Article 52, whereby we withdraw the election, will start again. You start a freeze nomination. So are those good clauses that we can go with them by 2026 election?
Thank you. Thank you, Lukulu Voice. Thank you very much for your contribution. We appreciate it. Mr. President, you can react to those concerns.
Look, this last point by
Lukulu
Voice. I'm surprised that is only. I didn't know that in Lukulu, where the people this year, the following year there will be 200 people. I don't know what type of demographic growth that is. Yeah. Where you find the 50 people, you come 2 months later, you find there are 100 people. There's nothing like that. You know, the problem that we have also, and that's why I was submitting that I think the government must create clarity, okay, over these matters. You know, I've not said that the constituency should not be subdivided. That's not my submission. What I'm looking for is what is the rationale? What is the objective? Okay, what do you want to achieve? And what the government wants, only government can explain it. And the explanation cannot be Yakwana. therefore we need to subdivide constituencies. Because in the constitution it says, that's not the main reason why you should do that. Okay, I think you should do that on the basis of geographical boundaries, or the dynamics of demography, population density.
So 10 years can come, but there could also be an option of we don't need to delimitate.
Exactly. So the 10 years is not the argument. Okay? And this issue of CDF is not the argument. It comes at the tail end of the argument. But obviously it's clear that my brother Lukulu Voice and myself, and he's saying those people that are against the constitution. This is a problem of argument around this process. People want to make blanket statements. Okay, we must learn to listen to one another and respect other people's voice or voices. So this issue of dubbing others as being anti-government because they don't agree with the one amendment proposal is wrong. I think the duty that each one of us has in a democracy is not to intimidate one another, it is to persuade one another. So once you start stigmatizing those, that say, me, I don't agree with the delimitation, and then you make a statement and say, those are the people that are against the Bill 7, you can't argue like that. Okay? I think I saw something, I think it's in one of the tabloids today, where the Oasis Forum, if they have been quoted correctly, they are saying that there are a number of good things in Bill 7, but we have the quibble we have with Bill 7 is the process. Okay? And I agree with them. But the way you demand for the process is not by way of a demonstration. The way you demand for the process is not, is not by proclaiming yourselves as self-righteous, that only you know what a good process is and others don't. That's where I have a problem. Okay? That monopoly where certain groups of people have the monopoly or claim to have a monopoly or to have the monopoly of being the people's representatives and everybody else isn't. I don't think that's the correct approach. The Oasis Forum has a right to exist. It has done good work, in the past. Oasis Forum credit. The Law Association of Zambia, one of the associations, that I'm proud to belong to, of lawyers, very democratic, is a member of the Oasis Forum. But the Lands Council has no right to dictate to me what I should say and what I should think about the process, even as I'm a member of LAS. Okay? So LAS can take a position from the council, by way of the council, and take it to the Oasis Forum. They've got the right to do that. I also, as an individual, as Winter Kabimba, have got the right to differ even with my association. And I think this is the kind of interaction that must develop in a democracy. Okay? I don't think Laz would say, then we're expelling you because or we're withdrawing your practicing certificate because you don't agree with the Laz position. So I'm only making a point, Zach, that let's take a step backwards from this self-righteous spirit that only those that belong to certain organizations know what the good process should be and others don't. Okay?
Yeah. Mr. President, how do you explain the current situation of the deferred amendment Constitution Bill 7, which has now been resurrected in Parliament, versus the argument that the one that has been resurrected in Parliament doesn't have the comments of the technical committee. Is this the case of there are two documents of Bill 7 in this case?
Yeah. I tried to outline the process. They were the process. They have seen it myself in the past.
Yeah.
Is this that when the Constitutional Review Commission conclude its task,
right,
they produce basically three documents. One document is the verbatim record of what was submitted by individuals. Verbatim. Zakaria Banda appeared at Nakatindi Hall on such and such a day at such and such a time. And this is said. Okay?
Right.
And then the next document is a summary. A summary of recommendations drawn from the verbatim recommendations.
Right.
So they are condensed into recommendations by the commission to the executive. The third stage is actually to draft the bill, what they call a layman's bill, okay, which goes to the executive first.
Okay, yes.
When these are submitted to the executive, to the president, who appoints the technical committee in this case, or the Constitutional Review Commission, as has happened in the past, that those recommendations then go to cabinet as a cabinet memo for cabinet to debate.
Right.
And they debate the recommendations as they are looking at the draft bill submitted. Okay? That's the route that it takes. So I'm not very sure myself that you can present the report to the president on Monday, and then on Wednesday the bill is back in Parliament, or a new bill is back in Parliament, or whatever. I think the time is just too short. I want to go back to what I said earlier. Government must avoid a situation where it creates apprehension in the mind of citizens that it may not be doing something with. Okay? Because politics is about perception. Okay? This is what made, for example, the RB administration fall. This is how PF won the election against the in 2011. Because there was this hanging perception that the RB administration was corrupt. That some of RB's children were involved in corruption. And when we were in PF, we ran with that
perception.
Took advantage of it. Because it was sinking in the minds of people. We are psyching people, and people were internalizing it. Okay? And MMD lost that election under RB, which probably they shouldn't have lost. So the government must be careful, and this I'm speaking to UPND. They must be careful how they deliver the message. There are too many spokespersons in UPND that you don't even know who is telling you what the government position is. It's dangerous. Okay? It's dangerous to have too many spokespersons from one camp. You want to know, who is he? And at times they make contradictory statements. Okay? So there must be some kind of housekeeping so that when a statement comes from the government spokesperson, who is also the party spokesperson, then me, who is a listener, must say to myself, this is what the party or the government has said. And if I want to respond, I must form an informed opinion based on that. I'm going to do that, Zaki, and then in the afternoon, somebody else comes and he makes a statement which contradicts the party spokesperson or the government spokesperson. Confused. in terms of the hierarchy. I thought that the president has delegated that portfolio to only one person to speak on behalf of the party, speak on behalf of government. So I'm not patronizing my young brother Mwetwa, but I think this is should work. So UPND has a problem in that. I can also take this opportunity to talk about my former political party, PF, because these are organizations that, and they must project proper administration. Okay. 2 days ago, I said, why do they continue referring to him as the acting president? Because he is not. Under the PF constitution, when the president dies, the vice president takes over substantively as the president. There's no acting position in the PF constitution. Nothing. Okay? Now, if you don't like Given, for example, that doesn't change the fact that the constitution supports him. It doesn't change that position. It's not everything that I like, that happens. There are things that I don't like, and they happen. So I have to accept them and deal with them. So I'm making a point that this issue of organizational structures, protocol, are important. So as we raise these issues, we want, somebody, to come from government spokesperson,
right,
and say to us, no, we are listening to your concerns, not by way of a fight, them calling each other. No, those that don't agree with Bill 7, they are ignorant. We're not ignorant. But surely, even if we were ignorant, it's your duty, to lecture to me so that I understand what you are doing. Because you are representing me. You are running a government whose decisions is affecting my life. I think that should be the spirit. So this issue of Bill 7 dead is because the government is not explaining itself well, and it has a duty to do so, to calm the fears, the apprehension, the anxiety, and the perceptions, to use those terms, put together. Okay? Because this is a constitution, not for UPND, for all of us. They amended the constitution in 2016. We are struggling with some of the articles in the constitution today. And the ECO is gone. Amena Napanga constitution. He's resting. He played his part. And he's gone. So similarly, we must draw a lesson, from that this cannot be, and people should stop in the UPND work. They should stop saying that if somebody opposes this, then they are anti-UPND. The president should not say, then people hate me. No. Because if he goes, like I said, if he goes back in history, it means those that are that hate him now, they hated Michael Sata, they hated Levi Mwanawasa, that's not they're just in disagreement. And maybe sometimes in disagreeing, people become emotional. So language is also important. The language that we use. So you can't use acerbic language which is caustic, which is toxic, when it lands in the ears of even the people that you are addressing. It carries some tinge of hate. No. I think pastors must use civil language, priests must use civil language, so that the congregations do not misunderstand them. I think the priest should not sound personal. The pastor should not sound personal. A leader of a civil society organization should not sound personal, like they are talking to HH as an individual. I think they must talk to HH as a head of state. So if he makes a mistake, he's making that mistake as head of state. Okay? I listened to the debate the other day. I think there was a clip on on the TV. I just came back from the farm where people were saying, "Oh no, why are you describing HH as a heads boy? He comes from a heads boy background. Michael Sata's father was a cook. He was a chef." I said to myself, "Is this where the debate has sunk? Is this where the debate is now? That we should be talking about, who was heading cattle and whose father was this? Arabi's father was a farmhand, in Zimbabwe. What is wrong? Why can't we just pick an argument and present your view as calmly as possible and as civil as possible? Whether you are in a civil society organization, whether you are in government, whether you are in church. If you are making sense, your argument will land very well. Because some of these issues, Zach, they are dividing even churches.
Absolutely.
Okay? They are dividing even church organizations. There are people in churches that do not agree that what the pastor is saying is correct. What the priest is saying is the correct thing. That's the extent to which so we must calm this anxiety of the people. And those of our colleagues also that are in the government, there's no need, to start attacking, the other side. The church, this organization, this. No. We must try to narrow our differences as much as possible by way of persuasion. Not intimidation, not duress, not coercion. And then we can find a convergence point. That's my appeal.
Now, before I ask you to make your concluding remarks, I'm tempted to just read out two important messages on our Facebook page. This one is from Henry Mavimba, who says, "Good morning, Messrs. Kavimba and Banda. I have great admiration for Mr. Winter Kavimba, starting from the 1980s when you were town clerk for Kitwe and Lusaka, and now as a politician. I believe people like you are there to guide what should be normal as regards good governance, owing to your experience.
Yeah.
NIPA was created in 1963 to train civil servants in various government governance etiquettes. Most of the civil servants went through such.
Yeah.
But later, this was transformed into a commercial entity. In short, I am of the view that all permanent secretaries, including the secretary to the cabinet, should have such basics from NIPA as before. So service delivery is professional, so that service delivery is professional, other than what we see cadres are sapping, and knowledge shouldn't be replacement for incompetence.
Yes.
That's the first one. The second one is from Few Days Nsensema, who said, "Sir, you are very objective. You are speaking as a statesman. You speak to issues the way they are supposed to be." Those two messages I thought I should read for our conclusion as I ask you to conclude as we close.
Thanks, Zaki. Let me speak to the first one.
Right.
About NIPA. Okay? My brother there is 101% right. In fact, my view is this. If I became president tomorrow, I would set up my cabinet and send the ministers to NIPA for at least 2 months to go through some kind of induction workshops. I would get the whole crop of permanent secretaries to go to NIPA for at least 2-3 months to go and get the basics of how government runs. That is my view. And I can tell you that you would not have lost that 2 months. If anything, you would have gained a lot by these people being away from the offices for 2 months. What has happened now, going back to MMD, is dangerous for the country. Very, very dangerous. Okay? When FTJ became president, again, this is historical. When FTJ became president, he got some academics from UNZA, those that he thought supported him, and appointed them PSs. From a lecture room at UNZA into the highest position in the civil permanent secretary. That's when the disaster took root in the civil service. Not that they were dumb, but they didn't know. Because if you don't know, you don't know. Okay? That is when the disaster started. And everybody who came after that, to date, followed that formula. That civil service is about chronism. Civil service is about public administration, to administer affairs of state, the administration of the state. It is the engine of government. Okay? In India, they have a policy, that all graduates, when they come out from the university, they pick them. The best, some of them go into the Air Force, some of them go into service, field. Some of them are administrators. They start from that time, they get and rise. Zaki, those of us who come from the old order, we get shocked. We get shocked. There was a lady in PF. There was a lady who used to clean the bathrooms here on Wansha Road.
At the secretariat, yes.
At the secretariat. You know what she became? DC. And they said to Mr. Sata, what is this? Is this how you reward even your tribe's person? What is this? There are people that we have seen being appointed PS. Oh my God. And you say to yourself, what does she know? What does he know about government? Because the PS is the advisor to the minister in that position. So how do you put somebody who has just come from some kind of small business, Tamanga, and you appoint them PS, and you appoint them into the foreign service? It is wrong. It is wrong. Yes, we love them. Yes, some of them are our relatives. Some of them are our friends. Some of them are our friends, children. Those relations remain. But surely to sacrifice the competency and the performance of the civil service using those relationships is wrong. And it is not wrong because I'm saying it, but it is wrong because even the people that are doing it, I'm sure they know that it is wrong. Because my view is that what is wrong, you won't hear it from me. Even you yourself who is doing it, you know that it is wrong. So my cry for my country really